there was a very narrow alley between houses, and I used to think I was going to be stuck there when I was young, and I was determined that I was not going to be stuck between two houses with the walls closing in. And I have managed to make a space for myself where I've been able to travel to many countries throughout the world to read my poems. When did I get to this place in my life where I was satisfied with what I'd done, but still want to do more? And that's exactly where I am. I'm satisfied with what I've done, but nothing is ever enough for me. I will always be driven. Nothing's going to make me a relaxed, easygoing person. And I feel that I got to this place many times in my life, actually, where I was satisfied with what had happened, where I felt I had reached a plateau, but then I always lifted off to a new place. And I want to lift off to a new place. In a way, if I look back at my poems over the last 40, 45 years, I see that my books are almost a memoir in poetry. Because my poetry is very narrative, because it's rooted in my life and what I feel and what I believe, it becomes then like a story of my life, a story of my parents' life, a story of what it was like to grow up in an immigrant neighborhood in Paterson. It wasn't until 1978 that we went to Italy for the first time, Dennis and I, and that was a mind-boggling experience because my mother-in-law came and took care of the children while we were gone, and it was such a wonderful experience to see Italy, to feel so connected to these wonderful works of art that we were seeing, that a book could not do justice to what they were like, to actually see Michelangelo's David in person, to actually see these works that we had read about in books and seen pictures of in books, but to see them in person was so amazing a thing. I have a long way to go yet. I know it's crazy, but it's not really that crazy because I've managed to reinvent myself many times, and I will reinvent myself many more times. I just don't want to break any more bones. I would prefer not to reinvent myself in that way. But I'm still writing, I'm still painting. I have so much more I want to do. I don't want to give up running the Poetry Center. I want to get to a place where we can have in-person readings again instead of readings on Zoom, which I found good, but not as good as being in person. However, one of the things I learned in this year is that if you do a Zoom live stream of a reading, it can reach so many more people. So even when we're doing readings again at the Poetry Center, I want to be able to live stream those readings so that many more people from around the world can see them and hear them. The other thing that happened recently to me was that I went to teach in Calabria at the University of Calabria, and I fell in love with Calabria, how beautiful it was. It reminds me of Cilento, where my parents came from, and the people remind me of my mother and father. It was such an amazing experience to teach there, and we have a book out of the poems that were produced there and the artwork, and it's full of Mark Hillinghouse's photographs, which are amazing, and it's such a wonderful book. And that feels like a great accomplishment to have edited that book with Margarita Graneri, a professor from the University of Calabria, and to have seen all those different places in Calabria. It was just superb. I want to travel more. I want to go back to Italy desperately. And I don't travel like a regular traveler. I travel to go read my poems and to meet other literary people and to meet professors. I was fortunate to meet all these translators. Elizabeth Marina, Carla Francellini, Margherita Gennari, all these people who have translated my work and it's been published in Italy. It feels very exciting to me. I think even my mother would be happy, but my father would be thrilled. So that's how I got here, and I have a long way to go yet. Lots of things I want to do, and as long as my spirit is alive and kicking, I will do those things. And one of the things I feel so exciting is that Diane DePrima and I were on a reading tour. I'm so sorry Diane died this past year. She was very good to me and very supportive of my work. And I think she's an absolutely amazing writer and amazing person. We're on this reading tour, and before we leave, she says to me, "Come on, we're going to go buy paints." And I think she's buying paints for herself. But we went to this art supply store, and we bought paints, but they were for me, she said. So she had her own paints already. So we get to the hotel we were going to stay in Santa Cruz, where we had a reading, and we get to the doors of our rooms, and she said, "Well, you go in your room and I'll go in my room and we'll paint." And I thought she was insane because I hadn't painted since I was a relatively young woman. And but I went in the room and I tried to paint. I was going to paint the roses that were in front of the patio, and I couldn't do it. I kept ripping up the pages and crumpling them up. And then I said, "Look, what do you do? What do you say to your students? You have to believe that what you're doing is important. You have to believe that what you're doing is your creation. It doesn't have to be anybody else's rose. It only has to be Maria's rose." And that really freed me up. So I've been painting a lot in the last few years. I've painted a lot since that day in Santa Cruz, but of course I was very busy because I was teaching poetry at Binghamton University and running the creative writing program, plus running the Poetry Center at Passaic County Community College in Paterson. So I didn't have all that much time. But in the last couple of years, since I became a Barlow professor and then retired from Binghamton, although I'm still running the Poetry Center, I had a lot more time than I had had before. So I've been painting and painting and painting, and I've had art shows. I'm selling a lot of art, and I can't quite believe it because I can't draw a straight line. I feel that there was a movement in my life that was tied to writing poetry and then to going in a new direction and painting. So both things sort of melded together, and one thing was one part of my brain and one thing was another part of my brain. And now I feel that it's never too late to do new things. It's never too late to try new things, to believe that your life is not over just because you're 80. And I believe that I have a long way to go yet. I have a lot of paintings to paint. I have a lot of poems to write. I have to do a lot of readings for my new book, When the Stars Were Still Visible. I want to do so much. I just don't want to give up. I've seen older people give up, and I don't want to give up. I never want to give up. I always want to believe that I could do more. And who knows, I might discover another thing. But who expects to find some really pleasurable new thing in your late 70s and early 80s? You don't. And I did. So I feel I've been very fortunate in my life to find things that I love: teaching, painting, writing, running and starting new programs. And one of the things that happened right before we right before the COVID shut us down at the Poetry Center, I arranged a 40th anniversary celebration for the founding of the Poetry Center. And there were about 300 people who came from different states. It was very exciting. It was just so important to me and such a high. And I think I was able to stand the isolation because I'm not so good with isolation. I was able to stand that isolation because I had had that really of having the 40th anniversary celebration. We did posters with the photograph of the front of the Hamilton Club building where the Poetry Center is, a photograph by Mark Hillinghouse. We had a lot of swag, bags and mugs and notebooks with that image on them. It was so much fun. It was so wonderful and so exciting and so great to feel appreciated and to feel that people understood how I started the Poetry Center from nothing. And here it was 40 years later and still going strong, although people said I couldn't start a Poetry Center in Paterson because no one would come, and they did. Gornick Editions published a book of mine, which is part memoir and part encouraging guide to writing, and it's called Writing Poetry to Save Your Life, How to Find the Courage to Tell Your Stories. It took me a long time to find the courage to tell my own story. It took me a very long time because I was trying to hide behind all the things that I had been taught in college and graduate school about what great poetry was, and tried to imitate the English Romantic poets or poets like T.S. Eliot with lots of allusions to characters in Greek myth, trying to prove how smart I was, because in the back of my mind was always that little poor kid from 17th Street and 19th Street in Paterson, New Jersey, who never had enough, and never wore the right clothes, who never had any opportunity to shine. And I was almost mute, I think, till I was about 24. I was so frightened of everything and everybody. And then when I was about 24, I got a little better, but not great. And then when I was 40, when my first book was coming published, and I won my first New Jersey State Council on the Arts Fellowship in Poetry, I started to believe that maybe I really could call myself a poet. But it wasn't until I was 40 that I felt I could do that. I've tried to pass on to my students, and that is that they have to give themselves permission to tell their stories, permission to tell the truth, permission to go this deep place inside them that I call the cave, where all our stories and all our memories reside. And we have to give ourselves permission to go there, even when it's frightening, even when it's dark and scary, even when there are things that we're afraid of or afraid of talking about. These are all things that I feel have to be done, that you have to confront your ghosts, you have to confront your old memories, things that made you humiliated or ashamed, or things that made you happy. All of those things are part of the person we become. I only hope that I have many more years to gather memories and to write about them, to celebrate life and celebrate all I've been given, even all that's been taken away. And it's not so easy to do, but I keep doing it and keep wanting to do it and trying to get my students to do it too. I love when a student publishes a book that is so amazing, and it makes me feel really proud that I helped them get to that place where they could tell the truth, because it took me so long to be able to tell the truth myself in my work. And in a way, when I think about my poem teams, they're another side of myself. My poems are pretty serious. They're trying to delve into what it means to grow up as an immigrant child in a city like Paterson, what it means to be a wife, a mother, a daughter, a granddaughter, um, an arts administrator, a professor. What does that mean, really? And my poems are digging into that. But my paintings are much more fey, much more fun. I have all these women I painted. I don't know where they come from. They come from my imagination somewhere. And I love that. I love that. I don't know what's going to happen when I paint. I really don't know what's going to happen when I write either. And I think it's important not to change things as you're going along when you're writing. And the same with painting. You have to let yourself have courage enough to know that this is something you have to do. You have to write about, you have to paint. And while some of my figures are quite strange, and why some of them float off into the space, and some seem rooted to the ground, they're a part of my imagination that I didn't know existed. It's like a part of myself has floated off into space and has gone to another state, another city, another country, and I'm able to be present in that country through my painting.
Ah, Ma Flanders. Of all the characters in those novels I read when I was still young and in graduate school, is you I remember, flamboyant, sensual, in love with life. You always looked for the main chance, and I, who can barely remember her name, 5 minutes after I hear it, remember yours. I knew you were self-serving, but I loved that you never lied about it, that you never made excuses. And I imagine you trying to make your way in 17th century England where a woman on her own would have been vulnerable, a victim. You remind me of my Zia Louisa, that woman who married 4 times, who wore a tan-colored corset with lace stays that had to be pulled tight to hold in her large breasts and belly, who loved to dance the tarantella, her whole body exhilarating and moving and stomping. And then I know Mal only through a book. I know Zia Louisa from my childhood, watched her move like an armored vehicle through life, past 3 dead husbands and onto a fourth, handsome, elegant ZWM. They lived in the small apartment above us on 17th Street in Paterson, New Jersey. My mother told me that in the night she heard Zia Louisa crying, but in the morning she'd come down the back steps, her cotton dress stiff with starch, her lace handkerchief tucked in her sleeve, and she'd be smiling and laughing. She never told my mother what sorrow she carried hidden in her sleeves. The world does not want to know, and you are mistaken if you think you heard wild sobbing in the night.
Today, I think I'm gathering my forces and trying to heal and trying to get ready for another creative burst. I've been out of the world. I'm always in the world, always surrounded by people, always doing programs and setting up programs and interacting with people. And because of COVID and my broken hip, I haven't been able to do that. So I'm getting ready to move back into the world and move back into my writing and painting in a way that I haven't really done in the last couple of months. I don't ever want to forget what is important to me and what makes my life worth living. It's very important to me that I not forget that and that I keep writing and keep painting and keep interacting with the world. I'm looking forward to this year, 2021, to having poems and programs on Zoom, to having my book come out April 1st, to having readings on Zoom and then readings in person. There's so much to do in the world, and the world is so beautiful. I have this lovely Christmas cactus that just bloomed, and I feel in a way that I'm like that cactus. Every once in a while, I just bloom, and I'm very happy that that's what's happened with me. I could not have believed that my life would be this fantastic, and it has been. Even if I die tomorrow, I have to be grateful that I've had such a wonderful life and that I've met such amazing people and had the opportunity to interact with some of the greatest poets in America and to work with some great poets. So, what else can we ask for? And I hope to keep painting, I hope to keep writing, I hope to keep reading, I hope to keep going for a long time. I'm in the 8th decade of my life. I turned 80 last year and will turn 81 this year. I don't feel 80 or 81. I feel very young inside, although my body is not so great, but I am feeling very young inside and as though I still have a lot to do. One of the problems has been that this year has been a very difficult year physically for me since I broke my hip, and also since we've had COVID. I haven't been able to get outside of the house, but I still feel that there's a lot left to do, and I'm waiting for next year, this year now, 2021, when I can go to Italy again, I hope, in the fall, and that I could keep writing and keep doing lots of things. I have a new book coming out in the fall. No, I'm sorry, April 1st, called When the Stars Were Still Visible. And it's coming out from this Stephen F. Austin University Press in Texas. And I'm really excited about that and excited about a new book, although I have 23 books already. And I also have 4 anthologies, and I've edited a magazine, the Paterson Literary Review, for 40 years. So when I look back where I am right now, I see that I have a lot to do yet. I'm sorry that in essence, because of the COVID, I lost a year, which at my age you don't want to lose a year. But I feel very energetic inside and very young inside. If you had told me at 18 that I would feel this way at 80, I wouldn't have believed you, because 80 would have seemed absolutely ancient. And also, when I was growing up, a lot of people died when they were 65. So you didn't really expect to make it to 80. I hope to make it to at least 100. I have a lot of energy left and a lot of things that I want to do.